Param Pujya Swamiji, all of our sisters and brothers who have come to join us at this sacred Ganga Aarti ceremony. It's that holy and special time each evening where we gather together in gratitude, in thanksgiving to the divine for bestowing upon us the light of life, the light of grace, the light of blessings. And here on the banks of Mother Ganga, we give gratitude to Mother Ganga, to that Mother Goddess who flows in the form of this holy divine river from the sacred Himalayas, and above that, who comes to us truly from the divine realms in this form of the river as the Mother Goddess, bringing liberation, freedom, divine connection, that divine touch that we feel on her banks, bathing in her waters, being connected to her in our lives. And as we offer our gratitude to Mother Ganga, we recognize that experience, as Pujya Swamiji always says, that we've been created, not just by the Creator, but of the Creator. And that we've worshipped that Creator for so long. And it's time for us truly to commit ourselves to protecting and preserving and serving the divine creation. Because we're not just the creation of the divine, but we are within ourselves that same divinity. And as we look around, we realize that we have this beautiful opportunity to be with our global family from every corner of the world, every walk of life, every color, every race, every religion. And here on these sacred banks of Mother Ganga, as we pray together, as we celebrate together, as we sing together and give thanks together, we remember that teaching of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The world is a family. And as it said so beautifully, the family that prays together stays together. So as we are here as our global family, that Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, we pray together and we recognize that in praying together, we will stay together. And that our responsibility as citizens of this sacred earth is not only to pray, not only to give gratitude, but also to commit ourselves to living as the embodiment of that divine Creator, and to serve that divine creation. So we pledge and we commit that in every moment, every word, every action, we will be preservers and servers and protectors and lovers and devotees of the sacred creation, because the divine pervades all of the creation. Our sacred water bodies, our mountains, our trees, our air, our soil, all of the creation is sacred. And it's our responsibility to do whatever we can to protect and to preserve this sacred, beautiful Mother Earth, Mother Nature, divine creation. So I'll ask everyone to join me in our evening pledge. हम सब साथ ही साथ संकल्प करेंगे. Sabhi mere saath hum haath utha lenge. We raise our hands together and we pledge from the banks of Mother Ganga that we will do whatever we can to keep these waters clean and clear, to keep our air and our soil and our mountains and our trees and all of creation in all forms safe and healthy and protected and preserved. Thank you. We also are joined this evening in the spirit of Vasudev Kutumbakam. The world is a family. We're joined by 3 of our respected ambassadors, Rajdut, 3 alag-alag desh ki Rajdut jo yahan Bharat mein serve kar rahe hain. Hamare saath upasthit hai. Hamare saath Mr. Mohammed Senjik, the ambassador of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Kamlesh Shashi Prakash, the Honorable Ambassador from Fiji, and Nehat Imini, the Diplomat Charles d'Affaires of North Macedonia. So a very, very special welcome to all of you into our global family. और ये भी याद रखना है कि कोई भी परिवार में माँ बाप तो है ही है, लेकिन मोस्टली हम सभी बच्चे हैं, हम उनकी भाई बहन हैं. इसलिए जब एक दूसरे से मिलते हैं हम भाई बहन बोलते हैं या भैया या दीदी बोलते हैं, क्योंकि हम सब एक ही परिवार हैं. और उसी परिवार में खासकर भारत की युवा जो है, जो युवा शक्ति, जो अपनी टाइम, अपनी टैलेंट, अपनी टेक्नोलॉजी इसी देश के लिए लगा रहे हैं, सचमुच वसुदेव कुटुंबकम की स्पिरिट को लेके इसी देश की सेवा में हम उनको अप्रिशिएट भी करना है और हम उनको इंस्पायर भी करना है, प्रेरणा भी देना है, उनको सहयोग भी देना है और एम्पावरमेंट भी देना है. क्योंकि इसी देश को सचमुच अपनी युवा शक्ति को आगे बढ़ाना है. उनमें टेक्नोलॉजी है, उनमें शक्ति है. और हमारे साथ इतने सारे हमारे ऋषि कुमार से लेकर सारे जो युवा शक्ति हमारे साथ है, हम उन सब लोग को याद दिलाएंगे कि सचमुच ये विश्व, ये दुनिया आप लोगों की परिवार है और आप लोगों की जिम्मेदारी भी है कि अपनी शक्ति, अपनी टेक्नोलॉजी, अपनी टाइम, अपनी टैलेंट कैसे देश के लिए और पूरा दुनिया के लिए आप बड़ी समर्पित से लगाएंगे और फिर आप ही से this world will truly become the place of peace and sustainability and sisterhood and brotherhood that it is meant to be. सबसे last अपनी गंगा जी की आरती से पहले I will give the beautiful Rudraksh saplings. Our gifts here at Parmarth Niketan are always gifts that keep giving. Never gifts made of plastic or wood or destruction, but always gifts that keep giving. The gift of the tree that is planted and brings new life, healthy life, and sacred life to our honorable ambassadors who have come to join us today and to take this message and take this spirit to be ambassadors of your own countries, yes, of course, but also ambassadors of Mother Earth, ambassadors of Mother Nature, ambassadors of this one global Earth family.
कर्पूरगौरं करुणावतारं संसारसारं भुजगेन्द्रहारं सदा वसन्तं हृदयारविन्दे सदा वसन्तं हृदयारविन्दे भवं भवानी सहितं नमामि भवं भवानी सहितं नमामि भवं भवानी सहितं नमामि। ॐ जय गंगे माता मैया जय गंगे माता जो नर तुमको ध्याता जो नर मैया जी को ध्याता मनवांछित फल पाता। ओम जय गंगे माता। चंद्र सी ज्योति तुम्हारी जल निर्मल आता शरण पड़े जो तेरी शरण पड़े जो तेरी सोनर तर जाता। ओम जय गंगे माता। पुत्र सगर की तारी सब जग को जाता मैया सब जग को जाता। कृपा दृष्टि तुम्हारी दया दृष्टि तुम्हारी त्रिभुवन सुख गाता। ओम जय गंगे माता। एक ही बार जो तेरी शरणागति आता यम के त्रास मिटा कर यम के कष्ट मिटा कर परम गति पाता। ओम जय गंगे माता। मंगलकारिणी मैया मैं सुख दाता तेरी ही गोद में आकर तेरी शरण में आकर मन शांति पाता। ओम जय गंगे माता। ब्रह्म स्वरूपिणी मैया जो तुमको ध्याता तेरी ही दया से सोजन तेरी कृपा से सोजन सदगति है। ओम जय गंगे आरती माँ तुम्हारी जो जन नित गाता दास वही है सहज में भक्त वही है सहज में मुक्ति को पाता। पिता त्वमेव त्वमेव बन्धुश्च सखा त्वमेव त्वमेव विद्या द्रविणं त्वमेव
Mangalaakaram Vyaptam Yena Characharam Tatparam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guru Namaha Tasmai
Welcome to Satsang. What an incredible joy it is to be back home on the banks of Mother Ganga. Back home here in Rishikesh. After being abroad for the last couple of months. And such a joy to be able to come back into our live satsangs. And after this almost full year of the pandemic and having to shift everything from in-person to online, from a time when this beautiful garden was packed full of people, to a time when we hold that in our hearts and connect through the beauty of technology. And now as the ashram just has started to reopen itself, we've started to actually have some few beautiful beings again back in the ashram as we've just started to open. It's such a beautiful joy to be able to bring both worlds together. The world here on the banks of Ganga with our sisters and brothers joining us physically here, and our world of being globally connected, even if physically separate. This is the time when it's your time, it's your questions. And of course, as we've been online, it's been a time of having to send in questions in advance, and so many of our global family have been sending in questions. So our beloved Ganga Ji will share the questions with us. We've also just discovered that there actually is a way, which we will figure out, that Facebook has to be able to bring you up onto the screen so that you can actually ask your questions live in real time as well. So bear with us as we work out the technology of that, but we will make that happen soon as well. And in the meantime, she will share the questions that you've sent in the comments or by email or through instant messenger, so many of the different means. And if we don't get to your question tonight, don't worry. Just put it again in the comments, send it by email, send it to us by direct message, and we absolutely will be sure to take it.
Pujya Sadhviji, the first question that has come in is, I'm getting closer and closer to the idea of becoming a sadhvi. Where do I go to India for that? Can you give me any advice on how to find a good teacher?
So, becoming a sadhvi, as the questioner says, it's a choice that we make, whether we are male and we take vows of sanyas and become sadhu or Swami. We're female, we take vows, we become sadhvi. It's a choice that we make in line with what we know is our dharma, to commit ourselves to this life of renunciation for spirituality, of renunciation for being one with the divine, of renunciation of all else, to be able to immerse ourselves fully in that spiritual practice, in that spiritual path. It's not something that one gets taught to do. There are so many beautiful, beautiful spiritual teachers all over India, all over the world for that matter, who can help you find within yourself that experience of the truth of who you are, that experience of oneness with the divine, oneness with fullness, wholeness, completeness, oneness with love, because that is the core of who we are. That truth of who we are is love, is boundlessness, is infinity. But the choice of a path of renunciation is a decision that has to come from within. It's a choice that you will know within, this is my dharma, this is my path. Things of the world don't hold that pull on me, that appeal for me, or not nearly as much as just immersing myself fully in a life dedicated to God. But what I would say is, before you jump into that, because there's no need to jump into that, in order to live a spiritual life, in order to live a life that is expanded and true and full and the embodiment of spirituality, there's nothing that says that thou must renounce everything, or that you can't be in a family or have a job or be in the world. In fact, our scriptures are full of stories. The vast majority, actually, of the beings in our scriptures and all of the sacred epics and sacred stories actually are householders. There's many more of them than there are sannyasis. Even the sages and the rishis, in most cases, were householders. And that's important because there's nowhere that God says, you must renounce the world in order to be close to me. There are some of us for whom we know that's our dharma. And it's a very, very special dharma that feels to me as it was something that was given to me. But what's most important, which Lord Krishna emphasizes in the Bhagavad Gita, is you must fulfill your dharma. And it is much better, even Arjuna says, I'm going to die on this battlefield. And Lord Krishna says, maybe. Now, of course, he's God. He knew what was going to happen. We have to wait to read our first time through the Mahabharata to actually know what happens. But Bhagwan Krishna's God, he knows what's going to happen. But he doesn't say to Arjuna, don't worry. Don't worry, you're going to win this thing. Don't worry, nothing's going to happen to you. Because what he says to him instead is, it is much better to die on this battlefield in the fulfillment of your dharma than to run away and not fulfill your dharma, or to try to fulfill someone else's dharma. Because Arjuna, of course, says, I'm just going to go to the cave, I'm going to meditate, I'll become a sadhu. And Lord Krishna says, that is not your dharma. So if you feel, our divine sister who's asked the question, if you feel that this is your dharma, to become a sadhvi, wonderful. Wonderful. You are more than welcome. Come. But you should know, you who have asked the question and the collective you who are watching, that there's no rule that this must be a choice you make. The question for you is, how can I, in my dharma, become the closest to God? Because, by the way, saffron cloves, in and of themselves, don't bring you closer to God. In and of themselves, they don't grant you enlightenment or awakening or freedom from ego or freedom from ignorance. They're just kapura. It's kapura of a very special color. The color has a very special significance. But the significance is only special when we take it into our hearts and live our lives like that. And dedicate ourselves like that. So the most important question is, how can you in your life get closer and closer to God? When I first came here, and I told Pujya Swamiji that I felt so blessed by all of the incredible blessings I'd been given, and I wanted to do something. I wanted to give back. I wanted to be of service. He didn't say to me, take sannyas. He didn't say to me, renounce the world. In fact, it took me 4 years of begging him to get him to even let me take sannyas, to get him to let me officially become a sadhvi. But what he told me was that he wanted 3 things from me. He wanted me, number 1, to serve the world. He said, you've been given so much. Use every minute, every moment, every ability you have, every opportunity you have to serve. And he said, number 2, get closer and closer to God every day. Every single day when you go to sleep, you should be closer to God than you were when you woke up. And he said, number 3, be happy. He said, any pain you have, any sadness you have, any grief, whatever you have, he said, just give it to me and I'll give it to Ganga. So these are the instructions of the Guru. Not renounce the world, leave everything, take off those clothes and wear saffron. But get closer to God. Serve the world. And be happy. Be happy means what? It means let go. It means let go of the nonsense, of the garbage that's polluting your mind, that's keeping you from living in happiness. It wasn't, here's a cookie, be happy for the next 5 minutes. It was, be happy all the time. And in order to be happy all the time, cookies aren't enough. You have to actually be able to let go of the garbage, of the nonsense that holds us back. So those are the instructions. I'd say start there. It's a very beautiful place to start. It's where I started. And by the way, even having taken sannyas, even having renounced all of that which we renounce in our vows, those 3 things are still what I anchor myself in every day. The celibacy, the renunciation, that comes naturally. That's actually much easier. Renouncing attachments, renouncing sensual pleasures, it's actually much easier than renouncing the stuff that keeps you from being happy. That ego, the grudges, the pain, the desires, the fears. That's the stuff that's much harder to renounce. So start there. And then if you still feel deeply that this is your path, by all means come. And even if you've decided that renunciation may not be your path, but you just want to come and get deeper and deeper on your spiritual path, still come. This is the sacred land. Whatever your spiritual dharma may be, as Pujya Swamiji says, welcome home. So come.
So since Sadhviji, we've just opened up also, there's a few people in satsang, and I wanted to ask them whether they have any questions.
Sure.
So if any of you have any questions, you can raise your hand and ask from where you are. In the meantime, or have your question ready. The next question is, does sexual intercourse interfere with a spiritual journey? Is it only meant for procreation and celibacy maintained through one's life? If a person does lots of mantra chanting, fasts, visiting temples, etc., does sex diminish all merits gained by the above activities?
Wow. From sanyas to sex, between question 1 and question 2. This is the joy of satsang, of that truth that's really all-encompassing. And as we always say, whatever it is that's in your mind and heart, when we have a garden full of people, I usually begin by saying there's no wrong question. There's no silly question or stupid question, as long as it's something that's really holding you back inside, that's in your mind, in your heart. So, is sex something that makes us lose our spiritual merits? Is it something that is harmful on a spiritual path? It depends. In and of itself, no. In fact, as we know from our numerous beautiful sutras that have been given to us, we have sutras of yoga, we have sutras of how to live various aspects, every aspect actually of our lives. The sutras are that tell us how to live every aspect of our life in a way that is bringing us closer and closer to God. And of course we have the Kama Sutra of, okay, so you are going to engage in sex, how to do it in a way that it becomes something that brings you farther on the path rather than something that takes you away. Let's talk first about the situations in which sex does take us off the path. Situations in which it absolutely does undo whatever spiritual merits we have. Those situations are, number 1, when it is against a vow you've taken. So for example, if you are a renunciant, since we were just talking about sannyas, if you are a renunciant, then obviously sex is violating your vow. It is something that's going to take you off of the path, is going to diminish your spiritual merits, is going to cause you to accrue negative karmic fruits. But also, we have the vow of marriage. And if you've taken a vow of marriage to one man or one woman, engaging in sex with a different man or woman is also something that pulls you off of the spiritual path. It's something that takes you farther from that divine connection. It's something that pulls those spiritual merits away and brings that bitter karmic fruit. Even, by the way, if nobody ever finds out. Karmic fruits are not those only given to us when people find out. The law of karma is there everywhere. It's not ki kisi ko nahi pata lagaya to koi baat nahi. Bhagwan to malum hai. God knows, the law of karma knows, and it pulls you away. So number one, if it's against a vow. Number two, if it's only something for the body. We are not animals. We are put here on earth with the incredible ability, and the reason that the human birth is said to be the highest creation is because we actually have the ability to be conscious of ourselves, to actually watch ourselves, look at ourselves, have that witness, have that awareness, have that consciousness. If it were just about eating food, having sex, and protecting ourselves, well, that's what animals do. They eat, they sleep, they procreate, and they fight off anybody or any other animals who might be trying to harm them or their family. What is it that makes us different? The ability not to do things based just on the body. And by the way, this isn't just about sex. It's also about food. We have the ability not to eat something that we don't want to eat. If we are vegetarians and we're feeling hungry, and the first place we drive by is a McDonald's, we're not going to go in and get a hamburger just because bhook lag rahe. We understand, I don't eat meat. I'll be hungry for a little bit longer until I find some place where I can get vegetarian food. We understand, yes, there is an urge in the body. There is a rush of chemicals in the body that is telling me eat, eat, eat. But I have my buddhi. I have my shakti. I have my shuddhi, my intellect, my power, my purity, to be able to say no. And the same is true for sex. So if sex is just for the body, if it's just what we call lust, that doesn't make it evil, by the way. We're not talking about good or bad. Remember that the question was about that which takes us off our spiritual path or closer on our path. And engaging in behaviors that are just about the body sends a message in our mind that says you are the body. You are only. These chemicals in your brain and in your body saying, I've got to have it, I've got to have it. But you're not the body. You're the soul. And so, if that sex is just about the body, if it's just about physical enjoyment and release, chances are afterwards, you're not going to feel closer to God. You're going to feel relieved in a very physical way. The same way that you may, if you're hungry and you eat something, and you have to go to the bathroom really badly, you finally go. Right? There's a sense of physical relief. But you don't feel closer to God. And especially if you're on a path and you've made a commitment to be anchored on that path, the last thing you want to do is engage in behaviors that are going to make you feel guilty, or that you've gone astray, or that you've just become hormones and sensory neurons. So those are the two main ways that it would pull you directly off the path. But if you are engaged in a beautiful relationship, and it's a relationship in which you're moving closer to God together, because that is possible. When couples get married, Pujya Swamiji always gives them the blessing. May you move together, hand in hand, closer and closer to God realization. Now, of course, they've just gotten married. They haven't taken sannyas. They're not going to be celibate. But what it means is everything you do together, let that be a way of moving closer to God. Whether you're sitting together and meditating, whether you're praying, whether you're engaged in seva, or whether you're engaged in the beautiful enjoyment of the senses when they merge in love. Either way, make sure that it's something that brings you closer and closer to God. And if it's in a relationship committed to God, committed to expansion, committed to depth, and if that coming together is part of that same practice, then absolutely there are beautiful ways of coming together in that physical way that are committed to God. There's a whole science of Tantra committed to how do we take aspects of the body and use them in a way to get closer to God. But remember, not to get lost in them. And this is the final, but perhaps the most important point. Even when it is something that you're using to get closer to God, even when it's part of what we would refer to as Tantra, ultimately the goal is to be free of it. Ultimately, the goal, even in married couples, is that you move, right? We talk about the ashrams of life. We begin in our brahmacharya ashram phase, the first 25 years of our life. We're students. We study, or 20 years. We're students. We study, committed to learning. Then the next 20 or 25 years, depending on whether you think your life expectancy is 80 or 100. But either way, the second fourth of your life is that householder phase, that grihast ashram phase, where you're using your householder life to get closer to God. You're using your marriage, your childbearing, your job to get closer to God, to get closer to the spiritual practice. But then we move into the vanprastha ashram phase, where we start to pull away. Even if we've been married, we've been parents, we've been professionals, we start to pull away. And then ultimately the sannyas ashram phase, as that final phase of life, regardless of what the earlier stages have been. So even if you are engaging in sex as a beautiful way, whether for procreation, because that's also beautiful, or as a beautiful way to get closer to God through another being, recognize ultimately that the point, eventually, is to move beyond it as well, and to move into that vanprastha and then sannyas ashram phase of life.
Ahead of Women's Day, there's a question that says, isn't women's empowerment a way to feed the female ego?
Haha.
And also create a female attachment? Isn't it an obstacle for liberation?
What a great question. For those of you over there in the back, the question was, ahead of International Women's Day coming up, isn't women's empowerment just a way of feeding women's egos? And isn't it actually an impediment to real freedom for them? And isn't it something that's just keeping them stuck? The short answer is no. But it's a thoughtful question, so we'll give a thoughtful answer, a more in-depth answer. One part of it is very true, which is women don't need to be empowered. So when we talk about women's empowerment, there absolutely have been places I've seen, even places I've been, situations I've been in, and certainly many more that I know about, where women's empowerment gets given out, typically by men, in programs or activities that seem more like giving, fish to dolphins that you want to do tricks, where it's like, okay, we're gonna have a women's empowerment program. Therefore, all of you oppressed and repressed women should actually be very grateful because we are empowering you. And here's when you throw a fish, and then you all say, oh, great. So yes, it absolutely can be very badly misused. And it can be misused in places where we are under the illusion that somehow we are giving power to the women, that somehow they don't have it, we are giving it to them, and that without us, they wouldn't have power. And all that does is feed our egos, not theirs. So yes, it does become an ego feeder, but not so much a feeder of the women who are being theoretically empowered, but more one that feeds the ego of those who are deluded into thinking that they are somehow giving power to women. When we speak of women's empowerment, really what it needs to mean, and I actually agree that semantically, empowerment perhaps is not the right word. What it really needs to be much more is about gender equality, but an equality that understands that equal doesn't mean same. And so when we talk about women being equal to men, that's not because we are going to permit them to become like men or encourage them to become like men, which has actually tragically happened in a lot of the feminist movements in a lot of parts of the world, where as women have fought for equality, they have gotten into this idea that somehow equal means same, and in order to be equal to men, we need to become like men. So we need equality, and we need systems in place in education, in government, in business, in policy, in healthcare, in infrastructure, in religion, that allow the space to be created by women, for women, just as much as it is created by men and for men. And women will come forward. We don't need to empower them. They don't need to be jump-started. There just needs to be the safe and available space into which they can emerge and blossom, let's say, rather than be empowered. And this is something that sadly, if we look at most of our systems, education, it's not equal. Now we may say, oh, well, we take equal boys and girls in our classes. But are you also teaching your girls about menstrual hygiene? Are you teaching them how to take care of themselves? Are you teaching them that it's not an illness, that it's not a monthly problem, but that actually it is a monthly blessing that reminds them that they are the divine creator embodied in human female form? Does your school have toilets that work, that are clean, that have doors, where girls can go in and actually have safe places to take care of themselves when they're menstruating? And if not, that school is not gender equal. Our workplaces, we may say, oh, well, look, we've got, 50% women. Great. Are they being paid equal salaries to the men? Are the women doing the same jobs as the men being paid the same amount as the men? Do they have the same packages as the men? The same perks as the men? The same moving forward higher opportunities as the men? How long is a woman in a certain role before she has the possibility for a raise or a promotion compared to a man in the exact same role? And until and unless all of these things are equal, our workplace isn't equal. So while the specific answer to the question was no, nonetheless it brings up a lot of very important points around women's empowerment and around equality and around women's rights, which are needed so, so, so deeply. Because for our world to really become the peaceful, sustainable, beautiful, thriving, not just survivable, but thriving place that the divine has given us, this beautiful Mother Earth, we need to honor that mother of Mother Earth, that mother of Mother Nature in all of the women around us. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening, a beautiful night, a beautiful morning or afternoon, wherever you may be in the world. And join us. Our satsang is now on Tuesdays and Saturdays. We do have the Sacred Sunday satsang, which is live on Instagram. That's, tomorrow, Sunday. The regular satsangs here are on Tuesdays and Saturdays, and our live meditation is on Mondays and Fridays. So until we can all be together here on the banks of Ganga, it's so, so beautiful to be together with you in satsang in this beautiful way.